Good afternoon this time. It's TK here with the Rainbow Default Files, and this week we are talking about the pregnant cars of China. No, I didn't make it up. These cars, supposedly, they have vinyl wraps and they have bulged up with these big pregnant bellies. And this video has been reposted a million times by a million different accounts. It's got over 9 million views in just one post on Twitter. It's been shared by all these sciencey accounts that just repost this viral nonsense. They're all saying that a heat wave in China has caused these air bubbles in these wraps to balloon up into these big pregnant bellies on these cars. Is that true? Almost certainly not, and I've got the maths to prove it. So let's examine what's actually going on here. We basically have this Chinese video. I won't show you the whole thing because rules about copyright, but basically what you can see here is we have these cars, they have a vinyl wrap over the paint, and what has happened is apparently we're told by these reposts that the heat, the hot day, has caused the air underneath the wrap to balloon up, causing this ridiculous image on multiple cars. Now, if you know anything about science, if you know anything about physics, you probably would think, hey, that doesn't sound quite right. Real talk, it doesn't. Air expands with heat, as do many other materials, doesn't expand that much. On top of that, we can see that it's very inconsistent. We're only seeing like one panel or maybe 2 or 3 panels on some of these cars that have actually ballooned up. If it was a really hot day, you would expect to see bubbling all over the place rather than just like one panel with a big balloon, right? So let's start by examining the video. I'll link it down in the description below, but you basically watch it. There's a Chinese guy basically just talking about the size of these balloons. He doesn't actually say anything about the cause. He's just like, oh, this is a big one. That makes it hard to see, whatever. And if you read the Chinese text in this frame, it says this occurred in Hubei on June 5th. Now we'll come back to that, but that's going to be important later. So anyway, let's examine this from a physics perspective. Let's believe that, okay, the heat wave caused this. So let's imagine we have a car with a vinyl wrap on top and there's a liter of air trapped underneath. That's huge. That's ridiculous. That's almost a quart. If you're an American, it's a lot of air. You would never sell a wrapped car to a customer with that much air underneath. But let's be generous. Let's say there's a lot of air already underneath. Now, if we look at these pictures of these cars, these bubbles are huge. They have many liters, many gallons of air underneath, clearly to have these big bubbles. So can a liter of air or a quart of air balloon up that much going on a hot day? Well, no. If we imagine that the vinyl was installed on a 20-degree day and then there was a really hot day that was 40 degrees, talking in Celsius here. So imagine like a 100-degree day plus in the US. There's no way that small amount of air could get that big. Here's the calculation.
It's quite a simple calculation. Let's imagine that the wrap was applied at 20 degrees Celsius, which equals 293 Kelvin, or roughly 68 degrees F. Then imagine that on a hot day, we go up to 40 degrees Celsius, which equals 313 Kelvin, or... Now, for this calculation, we are going to use the ideal gas law. That basically tells us that pressure times volume equals the amount of gas times the gas constant times the temperature. Now, the gas constant isn't going to change. The amount of gas trapped under the wrap isn't going to change. And neither is the ambient air pressure. So the only things that are going to change are temperature and volume. So if we rearrange all this, I'll just do it nice and quickly. We basically get this equation. V1 over T1, so that's volume over the initial temperature, equals the second volume over the second temperature. Now we want to find what the volume is after the wrap gets hotter, so we rearrange to find V2. And let's assume that there's a huge air bubble trapped under this wrap. Let's set V1 equals 1 liter. Now that's roughly a quart if you're an American. It's basically a huge, milk carton sized air bubble. So, all right, so let's do the rearrangement. So that becomes V2 equals V1 over T1 times T2. So V2 equals 1 liter over blah, blah, T, which is T1 is 293 Kelvin, times that by 313 Kelvin, V2, 1.068 liters. piece of cake. It's basically a 7% increase. Absolutely tiny. Just, you know, barely even ranking. Barely even noticeable. You can imagine it, so like, you know, this, imagine if this then got like 7% bigger, like not even that, like that much more, right? Like, there's no way that this small bubble is going to get that much bigger.
So that's debunked. There's no way an air bubble trapped under the vinyl could get that big. Simply could not happen. There is another theory some people are putting out there. They're saying, oh yeah, no, it's outgassing. So basically, when plastic products, when vinyl products, a lot of different products get hot, they release gases in small amounts. And that's the key, small amounts. If vinyls were putting out a ton of gas on a hot day, you would be seeing vinyl cars doing this all the time. And on top of that, remember how I said that only 1 or 2 panels on most of these cars are doing it? That's a hint. If it was a hot day and the vinyl was outgassing to this degree where it's producing gallons of gas from a thin vinyl coating, every panel on the car would be doing that. Every panel, not just one, because they're all in the sun, they're all getting hot. So that's debunked. It's not outgassing. On top of that, I can go further. So we ran our calculation. We said, oh, it's like a really hot day. You know, the vinyl was installed on a cool day. And then what if it was a hot day where it's like 40 degrees Celsius, it's like 104 degrees F. But hang on, let's go back to that date. This was June 5 in Hubei. Yeah, well, if you actually look at the weather reports, it was actually quite a cool day. It was quite mild. It wasn't even 30 C, wasn't even 100 F. So it's not even a hot day. So what's actually going on here? Well, that I can tell you. Almost certainly, this is someone that has gone around at their vinyl wrapping business and taken compressed air and put it under the wrap and ballooned it up. It's actually a common technique used to remove vinyl wraps. You simply, peel up a corner, get your little compressed air gun and balloon up the wrap. You can even warm up the wrap just to make it come free a little bit easier. But it's not expansion of air on a hot day that's doing this. It's the injection of compressed air that's putting those liters or gallons of air in there to make the bubbles. It's that simple. So unfortunately, a lot of people have been had. They think vinyl wraps don't work in the heat. They think this Chinese heat wave has led to these big pregnant cars. I'll tell you what, go down to Texas, you will see a huge number of wrapped trucks, wrapped Corvettes, all that. And it gets hot in Texas, right? Always 110 F, they love that. That's a summer day to them. And their wraps are fine. Wraps don't do this when it gets hot, certainly not to this degree. It's a hoax video, or someone's gotten confused because they don't understand the Chinese that it came from. Compressed air was involved here or some other trick. A hot day will not do this to your vinyl wrap. Certainly not in any way I can possibly imagine. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the maths. I enjoyed the maths. Till next time, TK out.